Hello there, I am the writer, producer, and I do the voice acting for the Star Trek Voyager Season 8 podcast. Star Trek Reverie is my offshoot podcast where I want to informally talk Star Trek from the mindset of a writer and a fan. Please don't forget to check the links in the show notes for more information. So, Strange New Worlds Episode 10, A Quality of Mercy. In the Season 1 finale, just as Captain Pike thinks he's figured out how to escape his fate, he's visited by his future self, who shows him the consequences of his actions. Directed by Christopher J. Byrne, written by Henry Alonzo Myers and Akiva Goldsman. Goldsman wrote the first episode, and Henry has written Spock Amok and Children of the Comet. Probably the two best writers so far coming together to produce the most interesting episodes so far. What does that say though, that the Akiva episodes have been the better episodes? Who knew? The man who wrote Batman and Robin, Star Trek Picard, Star Trek Discovery, and Dark Tower could put out something 100% flawed, but still better than any other episode apart from Children of the Comet and maybe Memento Mori. I chuckled when the writers threw in the line for Pike about his tragic backstory. They know what they are doing on that show. Something I hoped this show overall would do, but didn't, when it came to mediate on the issue of fate regarding Captain Pike. Part of me wondered if this show would break canon in a serious way. I mean, it had to if we wanted Pike to have a different outcome, thereby subverting expectations. And by doing so, the showrunners would finally admit this is a reboot. Now, it doesn't seem likely, and Strange New Worlds falls into the trap that numbed us to the fates of the characters from the Star Wars prequels. It's seemingly official. Pike cannot escape his fate because of TOS, a 60-year-old TV show. I'd rather this show admitted it was just a reboot, and then they can do whatever they wanted. But this show wants to adhere to canon, and many times it doesn't. It wants the best of both worlds, if you excuse the pun. I don't think that's fair. The show is taking the best from TOS and mashing it up with their ideas. And if anything of their ideas have been discussed in this season, it isn't good enough. Strange New Worlds, put on your big boy pants and break canon. You have such disdain for the older fans anyway, and annoy us in all sorts of ways. Because of this show flip-flopping, the show is saying, tough luck Pike, yes, you're going to get it no matter what. Your fate is sealed because that's it, and we're not willing to write anything above that. Insert Mr. Incredible at the dinner table meme here. Destiny is destiny. Isn't that essentially boring? Wouldn't this show give a more interesting throughline for Pike if we could discuss his fate and his style of captaincy, whether his fate is avoidable or not? I would be more interested in knowing the hypotheticals of avoiding one's fate and how to do it. That would elevate the drama within the show. And is this essentially the resolution to the Pike storyline? Honestly, they barely scratched the surface to mine this topic with. Pike never even once hinted at being reckless because he can't avoid his fate. We've got this in-between nothingness instead. More so when Pike has the benefit of so much foresight. Not only does he know his future, but he now knows another future from a future of himself because he's dabbled with two different time crystals. As someone in the Penske Discord put it, and I'm sorry I forgot who it was who said it, but I quote, "Modern Trek continues to push the idea that everything is fated. Pike is fated to be crippled, and if he doesn't, then all of history is unraveled. It's the, air quotes, great man theory, close quotes, for time travel. There's no point doing your best, because you were predestined to do something the moment you came into existence, so you may as well roll over." It's the least interesting way to end Pike's story. Instead of debating in hypotheticals, or whether or not just him sacrificing himself for the cadets is worth it, the whole dilemma is made moot, because now Pike knows it's him, or millions of people, plus Spock, plus the fate of the galaxy. That's not interesting to me. Back onto what I think. As a what if, I thought the story overall was fine. I'm writing a what if of my own with Star Trek Voyager Season 8, deliberately picking up after Endgame, and differently to how the books did it. I can relate to a fine line where you're reinterpreting history, but within a set of limits. For example, you can't have 2 or 3 birds of prey for the Enterprise to chase. And that's the problem with time travel stories. You have to think in 4 dimensions thoroughly to make it work properly. A ton of Star Trek in general doesn't do this. That's why plenty of opinions exist, where people say, just don't do time travel stories. They create plot holes that never get resolved. Voyager Season 8 won't have a time travel component, by the way. Take, for instance, future Pike coming to tell Pike his idea isn't going to work. Okay, but now he knows sending a message to the boy won't work, and his style of diplomacy against the Romulans isn't the answer, it's Kirk's. Can't Pike just give command to Kirk, or just do what Kirk had advocated for in this episode? But because Pike now accepts his fate, this means the writers have nothing to say about fate itself. It's like they wanted to do a TV show about Captain Pike because they realized he's really popular, but, oh yeah, his storyline from Discovery, set up from TOS, hangs around his neck, so someone needs to write lip service for that thread. It's so frustrating, and this is exactly what Robert Meyer Burnett is talking about when saying Strange New Worlds is just making Star Trek stories instead of timeless stories. This question of fate is that opportunity to write a timeless story. Sure, you can say if you stick your fate, and sure, you can say if you stick to your fate and make the sacrifice, then the fate of the Federation is a more optimistic one. Therefore, this is a hopeful story. But not for Pike, not for the individual, not for us as people trying to make our way through life. Are we destined to be the thing that people tell us, or are we going to break out of that? That aside, tying this story into the episode Balance of Terror is okay. I don't have much to say because the episode admits it doesn't mean much outside of Pike's fondling of the crystals. It's for his sake, and at least we can see what happens when the producers want to make the effort to pay attention to canon. Having said that, I thought the actor playing Kirk was terrible. Nothing of Kirk was present. None of the mannerisms, the speech patterns, or gravitas was there. It's just Kirk in name only. I don't understand why they picked Paul Weasley to play Kirk anyway. I'm not asking for a simulation of Kirk, but at least get the mannerisms or someone who looks the part. These writers also seem to think Kirk is a rule breaker. This is such a weird takeaway when, if anything, he tries to follow the rules. And saying that, I just watched Season 2, Episode 25, Bread and Circuses, and Kirk is literally making sure he does adhere to the Prime Directive, and he gets Scotty to do so as well. But, having said that, I can give a little leeway to this Kirk, given it is an alternate universe, or a what if, or something that the crystals is telling Pike. If the actor changes his performance for his eventual arrival in later episodes, and it has some of what Shatner imbued the character with, then I'd say it adds something to this episode where the character is concerned. And they had the foresight to say, play it here as a dry run, but don't worry about the details. But next time, let's evoke something of what made Kirk, Kirk. In summary, the visuals are neat, as always. Little details like dialogue from the original episode are present, and that's also kind of neat. But overall, this is some sloppy narrative shit, which even the IMDb page for this episode admits, and I quote, in his log entry, Pike refers to the Romulan vessel as a bird of prey, as Starfleet had, up to this point, little to no knowledge of the Romulan species or culture, and indeed were shown to be unfamiliar with this configuration of ship when it decloaked. Pike should not know the Romulan designation of the ship class. Indeed, in prior dialogue, the ship was only referred to as a Romulan vessel or Romulan ship. It's so weird how the writers just don't actually sweat the details for many or most of these things, but then they do for other things. And speaking of sweating the details, I don't believe for a second the Federation would persecute a genetically enhanced person, especially when they're an alien. And why is Pike willing to fight this charge and change the timeline for Una, but not himself? Remember, Una isn't present in the what if. The Federation already took her away, so why not let her fate happen and not his? This is why time travel is hard. This is why writing a time travel story is hard. You've got to keep it simple and to the point, and in any case, she's not an interesting character or done anything of value during her episodes anyway. No story has made me want to care about her. In fact, I care more about how Pike struck an officer while trying to stop them from taking Una away, and he didn't get charged for it. The Orville last week had a time travel related plot, which made more sense, and kept the time travel element focused on one character, and it works. And I cared about the outcome. I cared about the consequences. It's so weird how I can relate to the selfishness of a character from the Orville episode, but I can't connect with anything from what I've seen from Strange New Worlds. If I could rewrite this show, I'd have Pike kill future Pike as a middle finger to fate, throw mudder-fudding fate out of the airlock, and as a viewer I'd be like, holy crap, I didn't expect that. What's Season 2 going to be like? Pike unhinged? Instead of Una getting arrested. I would not have added special music at the introduction of Kirk. You're drawing attention to something that, for many people new to the show, just wouldn't understand or care about. And they did exactly the opposite of that with Scotty, because he was just there. That was great. I actually liked the introduction of Scotty as a little Easter egg. And they kept him off camera because they obviously haven't casted who Scotty is going to be. But I like the effort there. Again, it's so strange. They care about little things, but not other little things. Ortegas has her disagreement on the bridge where Pike tells her to shut up. Fine. But I don't know who she is, so I don't actually care for her opinion. Maybe I would if I knew more about her, because all she's done so far in this season is wisecrack her way through the episodes. And if she had her character filled out, and maybe with this insubordination that she showed in this episode, it would build up to a larger moment between her and Pike when Pike is shouting at her. As it is, I just don't care. If Crimson Tide can get me interested in an argument with Gene Hackman and Denzel Washington inside the span of an hour, surely this show can do something with the Ortegas character against Pike in the last episode of the season. For all of my criticism, however, I still think this is one of the better episodes simply because it's a what if.